Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Olivine Raiders going up against the Levincia Wonders, and as these two sides have a look at their opening hands of game 1, let's have a look at this tale of the tape where for the Olivine Raiders they've gotten their season off to a good start as they're looking to redeem their fallout in Victory Road of Season A2, whereas the Levincia Wonders, being clean swept in round 1 of Season A3, have found themselves on the bottom of the leaderboard, but they are looking to bounce back. So with all that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the metal decks? Will it be the lightning decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first in game 1, having flipped heads, it is the Ruins of Conflict deck, as they are going to move their Togedemaru into the active spot with the Blitzel on the bench, and they've already got the Zeb Striker in hand, plus that Shinx. It is the Aron for the Olivine Raiders, and their Laser Focus deck being moved into the active spot is their only basic Pokemon. But they do have the Aggron in hand, as it is the Luxray being pulled for the Levincia Wonders. They're going to play the Professor's Research, so they get the Tapu Koko and they get the Rare Candy out of their deck as well. They immediately move the Shinx onto the bench, and they're looking at the Tapu Koko to take up that last slot on the bench, but they look like they've decided against it, letting it go over to the Olivine Raiders here in game 1, who pull their own Togedemaru, immediately moving it onto the bench. But they've also got their own Professor's Research, so they are now going to play that. They get the leftovers, they get the Klefki as well, another basic Pokemon in hand, but Aron does require 2 energy here, as it does receive its first, so they get the Poison Barb onto Aron as well, hoping to discourage the Wonders and their Togedemaru from going on the offensive, as it only requires 1 energy. But the Luxio has been pulled here for the Wonders. As we said in the previous round, they were clean swept, unable to take a single win in the entire series, and this is a best of 3 series. But with that said, all 3 games do count towards the leaderboard. You get 2 points for each win in the 3 games, so all teams need to bring their best efforts, as it is a heads being flipped for the Togedemaru. This Electro Smash doing an extra 30 damage to the Aron, bringing it down to only 20 health. Now Togedemaru does have to deal with that poisoning, as it does come back over to the Raiders, and they pull their Lairon, which is fantastic for them because they can now evolve this Aron. However, with that said, Lairon does require 3 energy, so they do get the second one onto it here, but that lunge out does do 60 damage. They're having a look at the Aggron, who 150 damage with that Giga Impact, but it cannot use it on consecutive turns. They think of getting the leftovers onto the Lairon here, but it's already got that Poison Barb, and a Pokemon can only have 1 Pokemon tool on it, as it comes back over here to the Wonders, and they do pull the Lily as they get a first energy onto the Zeb Striker, and they're going to get the Luxray online. Now for Luxray, it does require 3 energy, Zeb Striker only requiring 2, but it's another 50 damage with that heads being flipped. The Electro Smash normally only doing 20, but when they flip the heads, it does an additional 30, and this is going to wipe the Lairon off the board as the Wonders take the first point here in game 1. However, it is now the Raiders sending out their own Togedemaru, as they do pull the Sophocles. Now both these sides do have the Sophocles in their decks, both of them as there are 2 cards, so in the Laser Focus deck of the Sophocles, they're both in hand already, but it is the Klefki being moved onto the bench as the second Togedemaru is pulled for the Levincia Wonders, and they're going to get a first energy onto the Luxray as they continue with these Electro Smashes, and for the first time they do flip a Tails, so Togedemaru only doing 20 damage to its opposing Metal type Togedemaru, but there is that poisoning continuing to afflict the Lightning Togedemaru. The Raiders pulling their big Melisada, they can restore 10 damage from Togedemaru here on its own side. As I keep saying, Togedemaru for both sides, they're both in the active spots, both trying to show that they have the better Togedemaru deck. They also get the leftovers here onto their active Pokemon, and with that second energy, they can go for these Bristling Spikes. It does 30 damage, wiping the opposing Togedemaru off the board as this Laser Focus deck take their first point. But if this active Togedemaru takes damage in the coming turn, it does 30 damage back to the opposing Pokemon, as the leftovers is going to restore 10 health for that Metal Togedemaru that's still on the table. It is the Wonders now pulling their Sophocles, and they immediately move their own second Togedemaru onto the bench as the Zeb Striker head bolt 70 damage, not enough to take the opposing Togedemaru off the board, and I've already said that name way too many times just here in game 1. And there is that 30 damage being done back to the Zeb Striker as the Raiders pull their second Klefki from this Laser Focus deck, and they are going to play their Sophocles. This will boost the Bristling Spikes to do an additional 30 damage. It's going to wipe the Zeb Striker off the board, 60 damage, and the Raiders have taken their second point here in game 1 as they are looking to bring it back and take all 3 in a row. The Wonders looking at how they want to approach this. They are going to move their Togedemaru into the active spot, not that intimidating Luxray. With that intimidating Fang ability, it takes 20 less damage from the opposing Pokemon. They do pull their second Luxray, and I have to wonder, what are the Wonders doing here? Are they still feeling the jitters in the early season as they know they're going to take this opposing Togedemaru off the board? They do flip their heads as well, so they get that additional 30 damage. So it is 50 damage, but it's that 30 recoil onto the Lightning Togedemaru. That Klefki does do 10 damage as Luxray still requires an additional 2 energy to go on the offensive. It is the second Aron being pulled for the Raiders. They immediately move it onto the bench as well and get those first of 2 required energy. The unlock from the Klefki does 10 damage, but also allows them to draw another card. And they do pull their second aggro here as it comes back over to the Ruins of Conflict deck, pulling their second Zebstrika, and they are trying to go for the win. They're going to play the Sophocles. They need to flip the heads. If they get the heads, this will wipe the Klefki off the board. They get a second energy onto the Luxray here, and here is the moment of truth, and they flip the tails. They gambled on the coin flip, and it did not pay off for the Levincia Wonders. This Togedemaru is an easy target. The Raiders pull in the rare candy, but that's not what they're concerned with here. They're looking at their Sophocles. This Aron does 40 damage, and they can retreat the Klefki, which is exactly what they're going to do here. And this Aron with their headbutt is going to take the 3rd point for the laser focus deck. They left it up to the coin flip, and it did not pay off for the Levincia Wonders here in game 1. But as we have a quick table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG. But here we go with our game 2, the Wonders flipping heads. They are going to be using their Blush Mountain deck, and they have already got the full Geodude line in hand, the Alolan variant that being, moving it into the active spot. But it is the Alolan Diglett in the active spot for the Raiders and their Super Burst Impact deck, and they've already got the Alolan Dugtrio in hand, plus both of their Professor's Researchers as well. But it is the Electrical Cord pulled for the Wonders. There's not much else they can do, so they send it over to the Raiders, who do pull the X-Speed, and they do play their first Professor's Research. Now they can only play 1 per turn, but they do get their second Dugtrio plus a Ferrothorn. They get that energy onto the Diglett, can immediately go on the offensive, 20 damage here onto the Alolan Geodude, bringing it down to only 50 health. Now Geodude does require 2 energy to go on the offensive as the second Electrical Cord is pulled for the Wonders. They've got the rare candy in hand. So as this Blush Mountain deck, they could get the Golem online right now if they so choose. But instead they're opting to go with the Graveler. Now Graveler does require 3 energy for that heavy impact that does do 60 damage as the leftovers get pulled for the Raiders. They play their second Professor's Research, they get the Ferroseed, and they get the Potion. They absolutely want to put that Ferroseed on the bench, because if you have no Pokemon on the bench and you lose your active Pokemon, you immediately lose the game. But they do get the Dugtrio into the active spot, and with this Iron Head, it will continue to flip heads until they get a Tails. They get 1 heads and they get a Tail, so we'll only get 70 damage, which buys the Wonders another turn, because they would have lost the game immediately if it had been 2 heads flipped. It is the second rare candy being pulled for the Wonders as they do get the Alolan Golem online. It does have 70 health, but they've got the Lily in hand. They can choose to play that if they want. It will restore 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, which is exactly what this Alolan Golem is, bringing it up to 130 health, which means the Raiders, if they hope to take it off the board, will need to flip 2 heads in a row. As the second Ferrothorn is pulled for the Raiders, they immediately get that on to the bench as well. It does require 3 energy for that spinning attack, but here we go, the Iron Head again. They're trying to flip consecutive heads and they get Tails immediately, so that cuts it off straight away. 0 damage being done to the Alolan Golem. This is great for the Blush Mountain deck. This is going to buy them a bit of time. As the Helioptile is pulled for the Wonders, they immediately move that onto the bench. They get a third of 4 required energy here onto the Golem. And they think of playing the Electrical Cord, a Pokemon tool that they can attach here, and they do so to the Alolan Golem. So if it is wiped off the board, it can move 2 energy to the benched Pokemon, but they cannot move 2 of them to the same benched Pokemon, which means Helioptile would only get 1, as it is the Pokeball being played for the Raiders. They get their second Alolan Diglett, moving that to the bench, and the Ferrothorn gets its second energy as these Iron Heads continue from the Dugtrio. They get 1, They only get one though. This is great for the Wonders because this means a Alolan Golem will still be on the board as it comes back over to the Levincia Wonders. They do pull the leftovers here. And they do get that 4th energy, and this Super Zap Cannon, 150 damage. Dugtrio is wiped off the board into the discard pile, and again the Wonders taking the first point here in this game too. They're trying to get not just their first, well, a whole series win, but they're trying to get just their first game win this season. As the Raiders pull their Poison Barb, they are going to immediately place that onto the Ferrothorn, who does have that Steel Spikes ability, so it automatically does recoil damage to the opposing Pokemon. The second Alolan Dugtrio coming online, and with this spinning attack from the Ferrothorn, Golem is wiped off the board, and the Raiders immediately get a point back as it is discarded, and 1 energy is moved to the Helioptile, who only requires 1 energy as well. And Helioptile is moved into the active spot as the Wonders pull the Emolga, which they can move into that benched position, and they immediately get that single required energy onto it as the Helioptile does 10 damage with this Smash Kick. It only has 60 health, so it never had any chance of outlasting a hit from Ferrothorn, but there's that 20 recoil damage thanks to that Steel Spikes ability, plus the poisoning being put onto Helioptile here. And you actually have to question it only did 10 damage. Does that mean, considering all things, the Raiders just did more damage back to Helioptile? That's favored the Raiders when that damage will be calculated towards the leaderboard, as the spinning attack wipes Helioptile off the table, and as the second point for the Raiders here, as the Wonders really need to get it together here in the early season. This is not looking good for them as the Emolga is moved into the active spot. The Heliolisk has been pulled, but it is a turn too late. They go again for this Static Shock, and exactly what we said before, that 30 damage, because there's that 20 recoil, the Poison Barb as well. It practically offsets what this Emolga has done, and this is fantastic for this Super Burst Impact deck. Once again, bringing it back as they get the Magearna pulled from their deck, but they're not worried about that. They just want this spinning attack, and they want to take game 2 in this 3-game series. And as we have our final table reset, the Raiders are looking to go for the clean sweep. The Wonders desperately trying to get a game win, as it will be the Raiders going first, flipping heads, and they've got their Ultra Wormhole deck to finish off, going up against the Lost Thunder deck of the Wonders. It is the Meltan moved into the active spot. It's that Duskmane Necrozma moved onto the bench, as it is the Xurkitrees moved onto the bench and active spot for the Levincia Wonders. But here we go, both teams also having that Poison Barb in hand already. We can see the big Malasada and the Guzma in hand for the Raiders as they pull their own Pokeball. The Wonders already having one in hand. They are going to guarantee a basic Pokemon, and it's that second Necrozma being pulled for this Ultra Wormhole deck. Again, they're trying to take the clean sweep as it comes back over to the Wonders. They pull their own big Malasada as they do play their Pokeball, and they get the Joltik in hand. And they get that first of 3 required energy onto the Xurkitree. That Electronica does 60 damage, and it confuses the opposing Pokemon in the process. They're going to get, or they think of getting the Poison Barb, and they do get it onto the Xurkitree here. They want to deter that Meltan from going on the offensive, but unbeknownst to them, there is that Guzma in hand, and there's the Melmetal as well being pulled for the Raiders. The Raiders, sorry, not the Raiders. That is our colorless type team in the PokeType League TCG, but there's the Guzma being played. They discard that Poison Barb that was attached to the Xurkitree, and they do start to go on the offensive with the Meltan. Now, Meltan cannot outlast a hit from Xurkitree, but Xurkitree still requires 2 more energy as the electrical cord is pulled for the Wonders. And they do get that cord here onto the Xurkitree. And if you're wondering why there are 2 different Xurkitrees, it's because the active one is from the promo set A that could be drafted from as well this season, because we are still in the A series of our seasons here, being season A3, as the second Meltan is pulled for the Raiders. They immediately get that onto the bench, but the Melmetal has come online now. With that Mega Punch, it does require 3 energy, so they get the second energy onto it, and they're going to get their own Poison Barb here onto Melmetal as well. It will be the Wonders having to decide whether or not they want to go on the offensive. They do pull their Beast Ball. This can reduce the damage that they take in the next turn. Now, they can only use this whilst the Raiders have not taken a single point. So if the Raiders had already taken a point, that card would not be usable, which means the Wonders really should be playing that card if they want to reduce the damage that Xurkitree takes in the coming turn. With that said, there is that Poison Barb that is on Melmetal, as they do play the big Malasada that's going to restore Xurkitree up to 90 health, and this playing that Beast Wall will reduce the damage it takes in the coming turn by 20, but here it is, the Electronica, 60 damage to the Melmetal. Now the interesting thing is that Poison Barb is going to cancel out that Beast Wall anyway, because it brings it down to 80 health, does the circuitry, and we know that this Mega Punch will only do 70 damage from the Melmetal, as the Stack Attacker has been pulled from the Raiders. They play their own Big Melisada, which is going to prevent Melmetal from being confused, so it doesn't even have to go for a coin flip to determine whether or not this Mega Punch will land. It gets that 70 damage onto the circuitry, and that poisoning takes circuitry off the board, as the Raiders, for the first time in this series, have taken the first point in a game. And due to that poisoning being the thing that took out the circuitry as well, it doesn't move the lightning energy to any of the benched Pokemon. It's the Joltik moved into the active spot. They play their own Levincia Wonders, and with this Jolt does 10 damage, and if they flip a heads, it will paralyze the opposing Melmetal. And that is exactly what happens. They do flip the heads, which means the Melmetal cannot go on the offensive. This Joltik is safe for the time being, but it is the Raiders pulling the Repel. This can cause them to have to move the active basic Pokemon, switching out with a different basic Pokemon, but they have to be basic. That's a lot of basics. As they do decide to play the Repel, and again, this would not work if Joltik had already been evolved into Galvantula. It is the Circuitry moved into the active spot, and it's got that 2 energy retreat cost as well. Now, there's not much else the Raiders can do whilst Melmetal is paralyzed, so they do end their turn, and now it is cured, but it is the Wonders pulling their Professor's Research to draw 2 cards out of their deck. They get the Lusamine, and they get the Oricorio as well. Now, there are no EX cards in the PokeType League TCG, except for this one exception in our Holland Allies side this season, but we talk about that more when those teams play, as the Oricorio does get moved onto the bench. The Circuitry does get its first energy. And they couldn't have played their Lusamine because the Professor's Research had already been played. You can only play 1 Pokemon supporter per turn, as the Melmetal is brought online as it was just pulled. They've got 2 Melmetals on the board, but it is the Necrozma getting its second of 3 required energy, and it is the Beast type being pulled for the Levincia Wonders. It does power up any Ultra Beast that Pokemon tool is attached to, but now they play the Lusamine, they can go on the offensive with this Circuitry. The Beast type, as I was saying, does allow active Ultra Beasts who have that Pokemon tool attached to them to do an additional 10 damage for each point a side is taken. So for now, the Wonders are yet to take a point. If the Raiders were to play theirs, say, onto Necrozma, it would do an additional 10 damage because they've already taken a point. And with the Pokeball being played by the Raiders, they get their second Stack Attacker in hand, but they choose to get the second Necrozma onto the bench and start setting it up with its first energy as they try to go on the offensive with their Melmetal, but they flip the tails. They're unsuccessful due to that confusion. And it is the Zeraora who is pulled, for the Wonders. Its Thunderclap Flash will not work, as it only works on the first turn here. And the Wonders thinking about how they want to approach this. They can wipe the Melmetal off the board, but that Circuitry is a very easy target for the opposing Necrozmas here. They get a first energy on to the Zeraora, and with the Electronica, they wipe the Melmetal off the board, and this Lost Thunder deck does take their first point in game 3 as they are trying to avoid a second clean sweep in a row. But it is the Duskmane Necrozma being moved into the active spot for the Raiders. That Beast Wall will be useless now, as we were explaining earlier. Only works if the opposing side has taken no points. One of the Stack Attackers is moved into the bench, and that Black Metal wipes this Circuitry off the board, and the Raiders are 1 point away from a clean sweep. The Wonders trying their luck with this Joltik. They want that Paralysis to come into play. Here's the second Zeraora being pulled for the Levincia Wonders here. They get a first energy onto it as well. And we're still yet to see a Galvantula in this match, as well as they get 10 damage onto the Necrozma, but they flip the tails. Necrozma does not have to contend with the Paralysis, and this frees up the Raiders. They pull the XP, but they're only worried about getting that third energy back on to Necrozma for this Black Metal to wipe the Joltik off the table into the discard pile, and the Levincia Wonders have suffered their second clean sweep defeat in a row, as this is exactly what the Raiders needed, because this will move them up to the top of the leaderboard, and next round they're going going up against the Levincia Constrictors, whereas for the Wonders, they are going up against the Mellow Rumbles. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.